So hello everyone, welcome to the webinar, Systematic Synthetic Phonics with No Nonsense Phonics, a DfE-validated SSP programme hosted by Raintree and Phonics International. So my name's Natalie and I am the marketing manager here at Raintree, and we're an educational publisher based in Oxford, although we're all currently working remotely due to the pandemic. So Raintree produce a range of fiction, non-fiction and educational resources for schools, both here in the UK and also internationally. And we've been doing so for just over 25 years now. So we're also home to the award-winning match funding scheme, which is currently live. So if you haven't got your application in yet, I suggest you do. I'm going to be today's host, and it's my pleasure now to introduce you to today's speaker, Debbie Hepplewhite. So Debbie is a former primary teacher, special needs teacher and head teacher. She has campaigned for many years to achieve research-informed, systematic, synthetic phonics teaching in primary schools. As a representative of the UK Reading Reform Foundation, she advised the British government for the parliamentary inquiry Teaching Children to Read in 2005. Sorry, Debbie, I nearly aged you then. And helped to inform Sir Jim Rose's independent review of the teaching of early reading in 2006. Debbie has spoken about phonics at several research ed conferences and alongside Sir Jim Rose at literacy conferences. In 2015, she established the International Foundation for Effective Reading Instruction, and in 2012, she was awarded an MBE in the Queen's New Year's Honours List for services to education. Congratulations. Debbie provides training and phonics consultancy services internationally, including an online self-study course, Phonics Training Online. Debbie is also the author of the online Phonics International Programme for all ages and author for the Oxford Reading Tree's Floppy Phonics Sounds and Letters programme, as well as a consultant for Rockets Phonics by Rising Star. So we'll just quickly go through our agenda for today's webinar. But before we begin, please do feel free to ask any questions in the chat function, and we will try to answer these in real time as the webinar progresses. We do want it to be a two-way conversation, and we do want to make sure that you get the answers to everything that you're looking for. Otherwise, do feel free to wait until the end of the webinar. We'll be having a Q&A session. So I will be recording this webinar and be circulating it to attendees tomorrow or later this week. And if you do want to join the conversation, you can do so live via Twitter, use the hashtag NNPS, and include our handle at Raintree Pub. So for the agenda, we'll be looking at the phonics validation scheme and why it's happening, how that phonics validation scheme affects your school, No Nonsense Phonics as a validated SSP programme and the costs and additional resources included in that, training that Debbie can provide both through her website and also virtually through Zoom, and we'll also be joined by Carl Pattison, who is the early reading lead of the Flying High Trust, and he'll be given an overview of how he's implemented No Nonsense Phonics skills in his schools. And then at the end, we'll have a short Q&A so we can answer any questions that you might have. And without further ado then, Debbie, I'll pass it over to you.
Thank you very much. Well, here am I, grinning away. Well, I don't know about aging me, I am quite old, because I'm one of your original pioneers for systematic synthetic phonics in England's context. And really, haven't we reached an amazing time when we've got a good choice of programmes, which is a really good thing. And I'm very grateful for Raintree for hosting this event, and for Nat, who's done a super slideshow, really bright, which is right up my street. And so let me tell you about phonics. Now, we're ahead of the world in England. We are the envy of the world for people who know about the science of reading. And it's largely thanks to different people with different phonics programs who have pioneered and campaigned for phonics. And then Nick Gibb, who's just sadly lost his role as Minister for School Standards, but he deserves a mention because he's really banged on about systematic synthetic phonics for so long and enabled England to be ahead of the world. But actually, you know, going back to the Rose Report, that was 2006, Letters and Sounds brought out in 2007. But we've learnt a lot in England since then. We've moved on. And I think this whole new initiative now is about that. It's looking at schools that have identified with letters and sounds, but because it was never really resourced, some schools have done such a cracking job of developing letters and sounds and getting great results in their schools. but so many schools haven't. And it's not really the fault of the teachers or the schools, because it was never really a full programme. It really was just a very detailed framework. And it's actually amazing that the Department for Education now have acknowledged that, because you know how hard it is for government people to say, oh, well, okay, then, you know, maybe we need to move on from there. And that's what's happened now. So as you know, the DfE have opened up this new validation process, which will go until March 2022. So if you are considering changing your programme, you've got plenty of time. And I do think it's fantastic that people are looking at the options. And thank you for anybody today who's joined us in that quest to find out more. Now, validation is such that you actually have to write up about your own programme. And No Nonsense Phonics is a collaboration between Raintree and Phonics International. And you've now got quite a few to look at. So let me tell you what the Department for Education is saying. You do not have to change your programme. It isn't mandatory. You can continue to use letters and sounds. If you've done a really good job with letters and sounds, that's absolutely fine. But actually, I do want you to also be professionally curious, because here's a notion. You can be doing really well with letters and sounds, but the question needs to be, but could we do better still? That's the thing. And sometimes the only way you can find out if you can do better still is to look around schools, look around different programmes, and actually not rest on your laurels if you were tending to get around the 80% mark in the year one phonics check. It's really saying, can we do better than that? And if you do have children lagging behind, we tend to refer to the bottom 20%. The tendency is to think that that bottom 20%, it's because of their home background or because they've got learning challenges or dyslexic tendencies. But bear in mind, we've got over 1,000 schools in England's context that sort of routinely get much higher results than that. So looking at our year-on-year results is very, very important. Now, the exception about what schools can and can't do are those schools receiving support from their regional English hub, in which case the Department for Education is now saying, well, actually, those schools requiring that support need to move on from letters and sounds that is made up in the school, translated by the school. Now's the time to seriously look at another phonics programme. And you've got that 2 years to do that. So take that seriously. And to be honest, here's a thought. I actually think with programmes and resources like No Nonsense Phonics, they're not that expensive. You could take a year out and you could trial them, or you could trial them with your slower children and put some hands-on practice into a programme before a point where you might decide to do some more serious investment. So it's a very, very exciting time to do that. So don't be in such a rush. Now, Nat, next slide, please. Right. Now, let's think about No Nonsense Phonics. Now, what I want people to really know is that all of these validated programs have got the same basic underpinning teaching principles. That is, we're teaching the English alphabetic code mainly at the level of the phoneme, which is the smallest sound we easily identify in spoken words. And we're introducing that code systematically, and any words and texts are cumulative. So children can apply and extend their code knowledge to words and sentences and texts for reading, spelling, and writing. We're all doing that. And then we are all not doing multi-cueing reading strategies, which amount to guesswork for lifting the words off the page. That is, guess from the picture and guess from the context and so on. So that's what we all have in common. But after that, there are some significant differences. So what I hope to achieve today is to try to point out what No Nonsense Phonics features, and then you are in a position to think, well, okay, that's what that looks like. How does that compare to other phonics programs? Now, based on research, the 5 pillars of literacy, which is explained in the Teacher's Handbook, I really only skirt around because that was the conclusion of findings in America. America has done thousands of research projects into the teaching of reading. And the 5 pillars of literacy that they come to are so straightforward, but they absolutely include the need for systematic synthetic phonics. And why that's important is because if you're old like me, you're right, we go back to the days when phonics was abandoned or diminished rather than strengthened. And England's situation is wonderful because it's strengthening the importance of phonics. And then we've got the simple view of reading, which again is not new. It's an old model way back from 1986, but Sir Jim Rose recommended it in 2006. And it's a super view of understanding reading being 2 main processes, the technical skills of lifting the words off the page and the language comprehension to understand those words. But I have something that I formalized in my work, and I refer to it as 2-pronged systematic and incidental phonics teaching. Now, the systematic is straightforward. That's the thing that we're all doing and the body of work that supports the teaching and learning in that systematic approach. But the incidental phonics teaching approach is very much my bag. It's about being able to teach any bit of phonics that you need at any time to anyone within phonics lessons or within the wider curriculum. And that's something that comes to be quite important in terms of the resources we use and the training I provide. So No Nonsense provides plenty of assessment. A recent webinar with Carl and I, he was asking me about assessment and really bringing out that the whole programme, which is paper-based for children and for everybody, is so tangible, so interleaved and well thought through, that starting from entry point assessment right through, you've got constant tangible assessment, formative assessment. And you can do staged assessment. So assessment is a strength of the programme. And then in the teaching and learning cycle, we've got a bank of plain text to develop children's language comprehension as well. So with regard to matched texts, No Nonsense Phonics has it built into the body of work. But those plain texts are actually more powerful than reading books because children are interacting with them, can tick and scribble on them, and adults can annotate on them. And so you're doing that language comprehension with writing, with spelling, and then children are doing the illustrations throughout. So it's really opportunities for deep practice and deep learning. And then another strength of No Nonsense Phonics is this notion of building up knowledge and awareness of spelling word banks. Now, the English spelling system is so complex. As you know, we have multiple spelling alternatives for many of the sounds, if not most of the sounds. And over our lifetimes, there is no way of getting away from it, is that we have to remember which words are spelt which way. So words with the same sounds, but with different spellings. Now, in No Nonsense Phonics, that starts in Pupil Book 1. We're already supporting teaching and supporting learning for that notion. And now, based on this new impetus into phonics, I'm actually writing matched reading books as well. But again, in the teacher training, I might be saying to you that you don't necessarily use them in a matched way. It might be more appropriate to use them in a lag behind way and use them in school and maybe not even for home readers or home readers as well. So you see, that's quite important with regard to not just the resources, but we still need teacher knowledge and teacher flexibility to make decisions in their own school about their own children. Right, thanks, Nat. Let's move on because I'm taking too long. Right, so here is the No Nonsense Phonics Skills Starter Kit. This is our original body of work that Phonics International Limited worked with Raintree to produce this. And it's a fantastic, easy kit for you to be able to evaluate the No Nonsense Phonics program. So it's all in one box, and you can see there, you've got the copies of the 9 pupil books, the teacher books, which are parallel to the pupil books. You've got a USB stick with amazing additional resources on it. So that means that some of them are projectable and printable to give you a full teaching and learning cycle. And you've got some little samples, the 6 copies of the laminated A4 tabletop alphabetic code charts. And by the way, on the USB stick, you've got projectable, printable, giant alphabetic code charts and giant alphabet and mini alphabet. So you've got some really super duper resources. Now, this is not sorry, it's okay, we can move on. It's not a new body of work, though. And what we had to do, Raintree placed that in terms of marketing at targeted support at first, because all of the schools felt that they had their identified phonics program. And so we aimed it at targeted support, but it was always a mainstream program as well, not just an intervention program. But actually what's interesting is some schools that used this several years ago found that it was so effective with their 20%, their lower learning children, because it's all tangible, it's all there, it's all content, it's all interleaved, that they then adopted it for mainstream anyway. So for quite a while, it's been both mainstream and intervention. So the main thing is that you've got these 9 pupil books, and we take that alphabetic code chart. Anyone who knows my work knows that we actually are driven by the alphabetic code overview chart. And all my resource design is not just for children and teachers, it's for all stakeholders. The work acts to train you as you go along. The work acts to inform parents. But what we've done in the pupil books is we've chunked the letter sound correspondences into those 9 pupil books, and we've color coded it all to break up a very large spelling system into these manageable chunks. And so that works really nice. It actually works as a mnemonic system or an aid to memory. Now, as you can see, we have this format of these little yellow post-its. And for the charts page, those post-its are in the pupil books, whereas in the teacher books, we continue with that format of those little post-its with teacher training. So they are incredibly easy to use. At the beginning of each teacher book, we have got the background work, the rationale, the mention of the 5 pillars of literacy, simple view of reading, distinguishing between the alphabet and the alphabetic code, how easy it is to teach incidental phonics at any time for your reading, and for spelling, it's with reference to the chart, and that you also need a little phonics exercise book for each child with writing lines, and that's the work in progress book. You will need that to work alongside the pupil books content, and you will need that for any overspill work and individualization and differentiation. So it's an important part of the program. Anyone who knows about letters and sounds will know about the notion of the teaching and learning cycle. And I've taken that across into No Nonsense Phonics. But actually, hang on a minute, Natalie. That too. No, that's okay. That teaching and learning cycle in No Nonsense Phonics is not per lesson and not across like one day. There is so much rich content and overlearning in the rationale and the resources of No Nonsense Phonics that teaching and learning cycle is more likely to take place over 2 sessions and 2 days. And the tip is that wherever you may have to finish a lesson for whatever reason, because you've run out of time or the playtime bell goes or whatever, you pick up from where you left off and you continue it with high quality and quantity of practice. Now, that's a very different notion from the idea that to teach one piece of code, you've got a 20 minutes phonics lesson, and the next day you do another piece of code in your 20 minutes phonics lesson. So now I'm introducing for people that the pace and progression of my phonics programs is very different from letters and sounds, because we are enabling so much more direct practice by those children in their hands, shared with home, which is why it raises the likelihood of children remembering all of this content. In the teacher books as well, we have got suggested comprehension questions for the little mini stories, the plain match text in the No Nonsense books, and also, as you can see at the bottom of this slide, suggestions for how you're going to mark and monitor and do the phonics hand routines with the children. And note that the children are trained to tick and circle their own work and be fully engaged with a sense of their own learning. And really importantly and powerfully, that it's okay not to know it. So we take our little 4-year-olds and 5-year-olds and rather than being afraid to make a mistake and want to rub things off and hide away from it and feel intimidated when they're not sure of something, The ethos we're introducing within my work is really saying it's absolutely okay not to know it. We're the teacher, we're there to help you, we'll give you lots of practice, we'll help you with that. Right, Nat, next one. Right, so we've got two notions within phonics. We've got the alphabetic code itself, which is all of the sounds going down the columns, shown in the slash marks, and all the spelling alternatives with key picture words. We don't just show the graphemes, we show the graphemes as a separate item and then embedded in example words, because positional value of the code is very important in phonics. And then we've got these little picture mnemonics as well. But you also need to teach about the notion of the alphabet and appreciate how these two things can be taught separately for some elements of them, but then there is overlap. So all of these things are provided within the program. Now on the USB stick that comes in that starter kit, there's video guidance, guidance on how to use the supporting material, correlation charts, one of which is with letters and sounds, which really annoyed me to do because I'm saying, well, it's a different program. You know, we've always held up letters and sounds like this amazing dominating program, which is so unfair because it was never this magic thing. It just happened to do an order of letter sound correspondences, which actually I think was a shame. And so there is a correlation chart and so on. Entry point assessment, extra assessment materials that do appear within the pupil books, but you can also print them off separately if you want things for your records. And as I said, you've got things like a giant alphabetic code chart, etc., which are printable or projectable, and a printable or projectable mini tabletop alphabet and freeze cards for each level. Now, I want you to take a look at the snake thing. So that's showing, imagine that as an A4 landscape. So that's printable. For if you wanted to make things like your freeze, and this is what we did to start with when we first launched this program, and it's projectable. So when you do your lesson introductions, you can choose to flash through them or introduce the next or the focus correspondence through those. And you'll learn later that the development is we've also got that is hard made, sort of hard copy resources now. Right, thank you, Nat. Right, here's a quick look at the teaching and learning cycle. Now, this is particularly relevant for books 1 to 8, but it's pointing out that in book 9, there's a slight change in the design of the program because we're getting into multiple spelling alternatives, multiple pronunciation alternatives. So a routine page called the multi-skills activities page is replaced by the list of the spelling word banks. Now, I'm going to say something really challenging here. My opinion is this: if a phonics program is good enough and the body of work is really comprehensive and the teacher guidance is really comprehensive, and yes, you can find access to training, information training, you really shouldn't need to spend thousands and thousands and thousands of pounds on training. And there has to come a point where you sit down and really study this and really work on it within the school. And so, which is a really contentious thing to say, because in England's context, it's looking to me like training is getting more and more of a big thing and more expensive. So I'm not trying to get away from the importance of training. I'm just trying to say that if you sat down with this and read it carefully, teacher-led, whole class interactive, with what? Freeze cards or the hard copy cards. Then what? Individual pupil revision at code level with the Say the Sounds page, at word level with cumulative word bank from a previous multi-skills activities page and or right. This tells you really exactly who does what first and when. But it needs you to sit and think about that and to envisage that and to have faith to do that. But it's telling you how you can do it and what you do. And for example, I'm down at the bottom here, I'm saying this little bottom wide rectangle, it said complete the new multi-skills activities page independently at first. Because a lot of times we disempower children and we rob them of their learning when we go through content first. So although as professionals we know about I do, we do, together you do, it doesn't take long to train children in specific routines so they know what to do. Ask them what they should do, ask them to tell you back, and then give them the opportunity to do new material first, and then do it together collaboratively and collectively, and then talk about the meanings of the words and homophones and word classes. And so these are specific things in my teacher training, which might be different from how other people have tended to do it, where they're doing the teaching to the child too much and the children do not get enough practice. So in each teacher book, you get this, because every teacher book stands alone. So although the program and the content is systematic and cumulative, the actual teacher book, you might enter in at book 3 or book 7 or book 9. So the teacher book and the content in that needs to stand alone. There's repetition in the teacher books, but you need to be able to pick up that teacher book. And we've designed that. Right, thank you, Nat. Right, so this is looking at the development between Raintree and Phonics International. So we've got that amazing starter kit, which actually you'll hear me saying that even if schools have actually chosen my other program, Phonics International, I still say to them, you can afford it, buy that starter kit and review that. Because my ideal combination is actually this No Nonsense Phonics, which is a complete standalone content-rich program. It is superb. But Phonics International is free and has additional resources which you might want for your continuous provision or sending home or whatever. And Phonics International goes right through Key Stage 2. So you've got a wonderful combination. So you can get the starter kit and you can get the additional pupil books from Raintree. And then via Phonics International Limited, we have developed some further hard copy resources over time. So if we start, for example, top left, you can see the frieze. There's a superb frieze. Again, it's chunked and color coded. And if you look at the sort of right of that frieze, we're now getting into book 9 and the fact you have got spelling alternatives and pronunciation alternatives. It's beautiful and clear. And when you go to our site, our actually shop site is actually phonicsintervention.org, where you can get these resources. But what we've done with these resources is provided printable guidance as well. So there's training and there's suggestions on the guidance, tips. For example, you don't want to be faffing around taking a frieze up and down at the beginning of every year like that. So it's about, this is so clear, you can put it above eye level, you can put it up permanently. And then if you had a parallel copy, you can just put your focus one on your main eye level display board. It's tips like that. So very quickly then, we've got little mini code cards, which are those with the mnemonics on the front and just the grapheme on the back. We've got a hard copy alphabet tabletop. We've got a range of 4 sounds maps, but on the back, we're doing assessments. So you've got teach and learn on the front, flick over, and you've got assessment. And it's a teaching thing as well. If they can't remember a letter or a letter group, they can flick over quickly and remind themselves. Because when it comes to resource design, I am old, I am so experienced that there's always something extra in that design, which is so sensible. I know that sounds very immodest, but I have a right to be, because it's so well thought through, and sometimes it's really hard to describe or to put across how well thought through these designs are. So there you can see that we're now doing our reading book range, and that's a continuum that we're doing. Phonics International, David and me, we have ready-made plasticized giant pull-up charts, pull up or hang down, and we've now got these flashcards which are the same design as on Raintree's USB stick. So the actual letter formation and the words for blending and everything, and telling you the words for saying the sounds for spelling, they are all in one, that resource for your lesson introduction. They're now in hard copy. Now, just across here, bottom left, I'll just mention this very quickly. because this is down to Carl. Carl asked me if I could do an extra pupil book to bring forward the consonant letter sound correspondences to help schools that have already got reading books that are more aligned to letters and sounds order. Now, I don't mind doing that at all, because I don't want people to waste money or waste books. But actually, we've got such a good programme here, it needs to be seriously considered. So it's a shorter book than the other pupil books. It just gets on with introducing those letter sound correspondences so that you can more easily align perhaps existing reading book schemes. And I've also, I've got a blog, The Naked Emperor, and at there I've got a whole post on guidance and training for using your decodable books. So that's a later edition. Right, now, let's crack on. I'm being slow and I want Carl to get a chance to speak.
Not at all, Debbie. Before we crack on, I've just got a couple of questions in the chat to bring your way.
Right.
So we've got the first one from Maria. I work with a group of special needs children aged between 8 and 14 who have massive gaps in their learning. The grouping size is up to 6 in a class, but their ages are spread. Is there anything to support these students? I currently use a range of different resources to encourage comprehension, daily reading, early decoding, and daily spelling. Every morning is the same routine, and we use dual coding to support. Is there anything else I can be providing for my students?
Oh, absolutely. Right, now, No Nonsense Phonics is really designed from, say, 4 to 7. But when people see the rich content, they often say that for year 3-4, it's easily suitable for year 3-4 and for intervention. And some schools say even 5-6 for intervention. So even the No Nonsense Phonics can be used flexibly across the age because it's the same code and phonics skills. And so it really is, what do children need? I absolutely recommend that people look at Phonics International for those older children as well. Phonics International has got the most amazing comprehensive body of work, and it can be used flexibly for filling in code gaps. It's got lots of play materials. It's not babyish. The illustrations are cartoonish, deliberately designed not to be babyish. You cannot beat Phonics International for that comprehensive body of work. Loads of special schools use it. And it's free. You just put in, go and register and look around. But on the homepage, go to the big pink button, which will tell you what is core. Otherwise, you'll be overwhelmed. But absolutely go to Phonics International.
Brilliant. Another question from Steph Debbie. Would you recommend whole class or groups?
Right, that's a very interesting question, because sometimes people choose my work because they don't like the prescription of others. Well, this is a specific prescribed program, but when it comes to classroom management and organisation, I don't prescribe because every school's different, staffing is different, space is different, children are at different stages. But I make suggestions. So, for example, if you're starting this with 4 and 5-year-olds, it may well be that you want to train the children in the routines in a small group and then grow that group. So you might find that you need to use your continuous provision timetabling to train the children, and as quickly as possible build up the groups to maybe work with, say, half a class, but of different abilities, because you don't want half a class of the slower to learn children, but you're aiming to grow that group because you've got so much content and such steady routines that children get stuck into the routines themselves and there's no downtime. It's really quite amazing. And with the training, you'll find there's different methods of differentiation with the same resources, extra challenge and a lot of independent practice that the children can do. So it's neither group nor whole class. It's aimed to grow your groups, but what it is not is homogeneous grouping. I've never found vertical grouping works. There's different maturity, children learn at different speeds. It just doesn't work for me. And who's got the money to fund loads of members of staff? So I often say, well, what is your context? What are your circumstances? And then allow for, over the year, the organisation will change according to you and your children.
Definitely. Lastly, from Joanne, a great question. Are there decodable books which match No Nonsense? God, I got my words mixed up then. Or do schools use decodables they already have?
Well, we're doing both. And so I'm now writing a reading book scheme that absolutely matches the programme. And on the back of the book, it's even got the same grid that we have on the back of the pupil books. Now, to be honest, I'm nearly at the end of providing books for the first 2 pupil books. I'm at that point. That's where I'm at, because it's, you know, it's illustrators and things like that. So we're growing it. But they're really very challenging anyway. So my work is always involving shorter and longer words from the outset. There's no phase 4 empty phase in my work. In the meantime, people can use what they've got, but they need to be sensible about doing it. Also, that's why Pupil Book 2 Plus has been introduced, plus a free PDF that I've got on my free resources page at phonicsintervention.org, so that you can do some jiggery pokery with the order. But bear in mind, everybody, you've given match text already in the programme. You've ticked that box, and that goes home for overlearning at home. And then you can lag behind. And for reception children, you can just send home the pupil book and storybooks and support the home to have wonderful literature. You don't have to make children read a reading book right from the beginning. Now, what I would like to say to schools is throw nothing away unless it's a really rubbishy look and save book that's just had its day. So don't throw away, but don't reject No Nonsense Phonics or Phonics International, because you've got existing reading schemes. That's the tail wagging the dog. Look for a really strong phonics program, and then sort of start to sort out your reading books and build that up over time.
Thanks, Debbie. A follow-up question for Amy. Do Letters and Sounds fully decodable books match this programme, and do you have a matching document?
No, Letters and Sounds fully decodable books do not match this programme. I've got a correlation document on the USB stick, but what I'm explaining is that bringing ahead these correspondences and bearing in mind, imagine you're beginners, right? Your beginners will learn at different speeds to sound out and blend. Some of those children will come to you blending easily. Others will still be struggling. Think about this practically. If you have a program introducing code and they're saying to you, you must have matched books, they're actually suggesting that you have 30 copies of every title of that program. And so really, no, because you will have children. My precocious child I always refer to as Alice. Alice may need a matched text or a matched book so much earlier than other children. You've still got a variety of children. And so I'm not saying it's easy, but I am saying it. You need to send reading books home sensibly. And you need to appreciate this. You have got phonics programs where the books are in the program. They're part of the program. So they're matched. But then this program has got matched plain texts, not reading books. I am building up a set of reading books, but we've done the practice with the matched text already. So I'm trying to sort of give you that. So I am suggesting that this is so good, you shouldn't dismiss it based on just Letters and Sounds. I'm saying let's move on from Letters and Sounds, because two-pronged systematic and incidental phonics teaching is so important. And the level of thought and the content in this program is so well thought through, it's unbelievable. And I'm desperate to get to Carl because he's objective and he'll tell you what he thinks. So shall we crack on?
Yeah, let's crack on.
Right, here we go then. This is just to say all of these things are available. Now, in No Nonsense Phonics, the program, which is No Nonsense Phonics Skills, pupil books and teacher books, and then these additional display resources and things like your flashcards and your frees. All of the main things you would want in a phonics program are now in No Nonsense Phonics. It really is a very complete standalone program. Free sheets, flashcards, alphabet tabletop, giant, mini code cards, sound maps, this optional book, which is really based on people having existing reading books, the home study pack, which was about homeschooling over COVID. And now we are doing these reading books, which they exist now, but I'm adding to them as we go along. I also want to just mention Wand Phonics, because Wand Phonics is a body of work that I wrote for another company called Wand Education, which is a digital interactive resource that totally complements No Nonsense Phonics skills. It's got the same key picture words that are featured in No Nonsense Phonics and Phonics International, like you can see on the alphabetic code charts, which exemplifies the code in real words with those pictures. It's based on a teaching and learning cycle with little bite-sized activities that covers all the phonics skills and sub-skills. And it goes from code to words to texts throughout the program. So there are matched texts. There are 2 texts for each piece of code throughout the whole program. So we're trialing it at the moment, and it will be up and running soon, and it will be a huge compliment. Now, I don't want that to be something that's majored in school, because the paper-based work, in my opinion, is so incredibly important, but it's great to complement in home. Schools can give access to parents in the home. They can hear the sounds. They can see the phonics skills in action. There's activities for phonemic awareness. So again, it's informing home and providing those things that some parents will really lack in confidence. It's there for them, laid on a plate for them. So watch out for that. And then this school training portal is in process, which is not online now, but it will be a portal where there will be a growing body of pre-recorded webinars based on different themes, launching No Nonsense Phonics, launching Phonics International, how to support reading, issues around various things. And I hope to build up continuous professional development with some films from people who are using it in situ. It will never be hugely expensive. I am proud of the fact that we price things really reasonably and fairly. And that is the ethos. And Raintree is the same. These are not overpriced things. And so that's something to consider. So don't equate inexpensive or free with not very good, because that's just not true. So any more slides, Nat? Right, training then. The teacher book provides you with training. If you go to phonixintervention.org and click on the button that says about No Nonsense Phonics, there's super duper information and training there. There's a flick through PowerPoint about the body of work, but there's also one with my audio. You listen carefully to that, and that is training, and it's free, and it will enable you to have genuine evaluation of what you think of the program. I do bespoke Zoom webinars already. Believe you me, I work internationally, right? I am a very busy lady, right? Not a day goes by without I'm doing it. So I'm extremely experienced, and I can answer any questions at all that people throw at me. So that's available now already. And we've reached Carl. Now, I must say I'm a bit embarrassed here, actually, Natty. It's my fault because I haven't picked up on the spelling. So here we are, phonics program, and we've not spelt Carl's name correct. I'm so embarrassed about that. Carl, I've got to apologise profusely, but we'll move past that, and I'm going to give the floor to you.
Thanks, Debbie. Wrong phoneme. I'm not I'm a I in that bit. Hi everyone. So I was asked to come and sort of talk about phonics and No Nonsense Phonics skills and what we've been doing at a trust level. And a sort of bit of a disclaimer, really, is being the trust lead for reading is sort of one of my various different roles, and I'm solely talking from my trust position, not my other roles, if you know me, in various other roles. Now, what started this off for us as a trust was, why aren't all children becoming readers? Okay, what is it that's happening? And then, so luckily in my role, I get to visit lots and lots of schools and sort of see that in front of me. And once I started to see sort of 150 plus lessons, you can see some combined things coming together and shaping why children aren't all becoming readers. So from that point, it was like, okay, so what can we do about this as a trust? One of the things that we decided is to limit the number of programs that we use in our trust so that we can have sort of efficiencies, really, in terms of central team being able to support, sharing of expertise between schools, sharing of resources between schools. So within our trust, we don't direct just one program, we have a small selection. You know, many really, really good programs out there, but we have a small selection. And within our small selection is No Nonsense Phonics Skills. And the reason why we put it into as one of the options is because out of all the things that we felt that children weren't doing in lessons and things like that, we felt that this addressed the bulk of those and is going to give something to our schools that's going to be very different. And so that was a sort of starting sort of position, really. And as I learned more about the resource and worked with Debbie on it, we then started to implement it across the trust. And we implemented it at a really interesting time. So our first couple of schools went ahead in January this year, and we know what happened in January this year. The children all headed off home. And so we actually, when we implemented it in our first schools, it was during lockdown. And actually one of the real strengths of the resource shone through because the resource was ready to go. So one of our first schools got the No Nonsense Phonics Skills booklets into the households as quick as possible. And yes, the books weren't filled in 100% how they needed to be, but the content was in front of the children, and then the teacher was on screen guiding them through that content. And that school that went first, in terms of standards, we're seeing a big improvement there. And the other sort of thing that I wanted to say is having those high quality resources, you know, it's brilliant, and hopefully we never have to go into another lockdown again. But having the high quality resources doesn't just do that. It frees up your teachers to think about the teaching and learning, and that's what we want. We want our teachers thinking about the children in front of them, not where am I going to find this, how am I going to make that. We don't want our teachers making resources. Let's have them focused on what they're designed to do in that teaching and learning. And the second bit is, you know, who do we want to make our materials? Well, we want someone like Debbie or a program author to make those resources for us, use their expertise, give us the resources, and let's bring them to life in the classroom. So that's the sort of one of the points that seems to shine through from our schools and what we're seeing. I think the other point that schools enjoy is the steadier progress. And what I mean by that, sort of one GPC over 2 days. And what that allows is for deeper learning. So not that rapid learning that can often forget and lose its way. The schools love the deeper learning, the exploration at code level, word level, sentence level, text level, across reading and writing, you know, that real in-depth approach. So yes, it's steadier, but there's definitely that rigor there. And I think something else that has really shone through in our schools that are implementing this, I'm going to use the word independence. So the independence, and Debbie mentioned this, it's this idea that the children go first. And by going first, the children are really, really showing what they can do. And because they're going first with the resources, the adults are freed up. And what they're able to do is provide far more individual feedback to children, because they're not stood at the front doing their thing. They're getting in there while the children are working and giving some really bespoke feedback, and then using all the information when it is their turn to go through it with the children. And that's sort of flipping on its head. It really enables teachers to use that assessment information and what they're learning about the children. And when I go and work with schools, some interesting bits happen as well. Children wander off, not just wandering off, they wandered off the alphabetic code chart and having discussions. So one child was talking with another about all the 4 sounds or phonemes for the O, the letter O, so the O grapheme. And they're having discussions about, we've got 3, where's the other one? And some excellent discussions about certain spellings. Okay, so that we've had all sorts happening. Can I stay in? Boys who were totally switched off because the code was unknown to them and it was too much for them. Boys say, can I stay in and do a little bit more self-dictation? Can I do some copywriting? And that to me, I think is a really special sign. And my other point is, could we do even better? A lot of you guys will be doing fabulous work, but actually, you got to ask yourselves, why aren't all children reading and spelling well? And maybe this is something that'll help you on that journey. And finally, I guess my last point that is shining through in terms of the schools that are using this is, phonics is very, very much about, you know, that we're doing it to be readers, but actually this material does far more than your traditional phonics. Yes, children are reading, and the level of challenge in the reading is high, which I think is what we need. But the spelling expectation is there, the presentation expectation is there, the comprehension of the mini story is there, and finally the vocabulary expectation as well. You know, for you know, that can sometimes get missed. So actually, as a package, it is doing probably far more than maybe what what we're used to as well, and therefore that can only be beneficial for our children. So I hope that gives you a bit of an insight in some of the early signs that I'm seeing with the schools that are implementing this, and I'm looking forward to seeing it grow further, really. So yeah, thank you for inviting me to share it.
Thank you so much, Carl. It's been such a pleasure working with you and all the schools you've brought to the table. And interestingly, I'll just say to round off that I've almost spent 20 years getting over preconceived ideas from people, mindset, the mindset that it's not age appropriate for children to sit at a desk and to have paper-based work, you know, the anti-worksheet culture. And it's so wrong. You know, first of all, I have to persuade people, and then you hear them say, oh, Debbie, the children love this. Well, of course they do, because they've got their own content. They're taught the little activities. They can get on with it. They're not just sedentary listening to the teacher doing it to them. And they can feel themselves learning. And it's so exciting because teachers can feel themselves teaching. So even before I wrote phonics resources and programs, and I just got more into phonics many, many years ago, I saw the growth of the children in front of me. It was really incredible. And then if ever I had a visiting supply teacher, if I couldn't for any reason be in the classroom, those supply teachers would say to me, gosh, Debbie, I can do anything. The children can read, the children can write. It's just amazing. So I'm at the moment, I'm talking about year 1, year 2 children. They were so empowered. And so when children get fit for purpose practice, content rich, interleave, fit for purpose practice, and for reading, writing and spelling, it is paper-based resources which are tangible for practice, go home back and forth to inform home, but also highly accountable. And so it's not about mini whiteboard work, rub it off. Games and activities, pack them away. Not at all. I can't describe to you how corny I am nowadays with words like tangible, fit for purpose, content rich, interleaving, maths of the phonics, to try to put across the level of design in these resources and in this program and in my work. So I'm so heartened as a pioneer for systematic synthetic phonics where the country is, but now is really an opportunity for schools to dig deep in thinking about what it is that raises the likelihood of a common quality of provision, quality of any adult being supported to teach and support teachers and teaching assistants, quality of what you inform parents with, quality of what children practice with, and accountability, because senior management can go around that school and pick any child's pupil book and just know exactly what they've done, where they've come from and how they're doing, because it's all there tangibly, and the parents and carers at home can see that tangibly. And so really bring on the paper-based content, and I'm proud of that. So I'll shut up because we're nearly there. Any more questions that people want to ask?
Not a question, Debbie, but just a really lovely comment. So from Ellen, I cannot tell you how much I appreciate that you've taken the burden of searching for or creating resources from teachers so that we can focus on the learner more. How lovely is that?
Oh, that's so lovely. And that's what we've tried to achieve. That is so wonderful. But Carl and I know that the job's not done, because then I rely on the teachers doing a good job with it. So things like the quality of the introduction and the understanding and development of vocabulary, how to talk through the words with the children and so on, and standards. I don't like the word rigor with rigor and commitment. I've turned rigor into fastidiousness. It still requires the adults to be fastidious in the quality of what they expect from children and picking up on everything, you know, letter formation, showing children, right, here's the thing. If we want high expectations of children, we have to manifest them. You can't just say, I've got high expectations. It's how can you deliver on the high expectations? So by giving you that stuff, you then need to work on it in school, not just your phonics lead, not just the head teacher getting excited about it. Every single member of staff needs to become that expert. And it takes some reading and some willingness, if you like. You can't opt out of it, but if you do this well, I'm telling you, you'll get extraordinary standards from all of your children.
Debbie, could I just pick up on one of the questions that's coming, because it's more of a sort of implementation thing, and it is Joanne talking about purchasing resources to get going. One of the things that I tried, Joanne, that seemed to work quite well is buying the starter packs. So within the starter packs, there are 6 of each booklet. That's right, isn't it, Debbie? Within the
yes.
So if you buy, for your example, your one form entry, if you buy 5 starter packs, that gives you enough of all the booklets, but it also gives you enough of the teacher booklets for your staff to have as well. And then if new children come along or things happen to those booklets, you could supplement your stock with individual books as well. So I would definitely go with the starter pack and have a look at your the freeze alphabetic code charts as well that you want in your space as well. That's what we do to start with.
A question from Nancy, Debbie. Is it possible to follow the scheme without using the pupil workbooks?
Why would you? Why would you? You just wouldn't. The pupil books are fab. And look at those front covers. Children love them. And actually, I don't know if other pupils' workbooks, if they have them in their programs, have coloured ones. These are lovely quality things. Now, funnily enough, in Phonics International, we've got all the resources, they're all printable. There's a cost in printing. There's a cost in phonics folders. So if you look at the cost of each pupil book per pupil and realise how long you use it for, but you do overlearning constantly, it's extremely reasonably priced. So why would you not use them?
It's time as well, isn't it? The time to prepare those resources,
absolutely,
and print them and get them ready.
Yes.
Children love their own booklet. Having their own, and we would. I was supporting a lesson the other day, and we spotted the squid that was in the mini story, and being able to go back to the front cover and find the squid on their own booklet and things like that. So having their own booklet is, the children love it as well as it being a powerful resource.
And the children draw throughout those mini stories. Then the children do the little quick sketches, which need to match the mini story. So there's a huge vocabulary enrichment and language comprehension in that. And so really, literally, why would you not? No, you need the pupil. If you're trying to do baseline assessment and placement, and you've got a book and children have some gaps in the code in that book, but know some of the code in that book, still use the book from the beginning. I'm a great believer in the best fit approach. So, phonics is not just about the code, knowing the code. When you see a program like mine, it's so rich with words and everything else, even if they know that code, let's do the word practice, let's do the text level practice, and all that handwriting as well. So there's a massive amount. It's a complete foundational skills. What it's not is genre writing or literature. It really is focused on those foundational literacy skills.
One last question was, will the recording be sent out? That's for me. So yes, it will be sent out. I'll be sending it out either tomorrow or later this week. So you will receive a recording of this webinar. One more question from Diane, Debbie. If using the programme as an intervention, is there access to further reinforcement activities to enhance the children's books?
Yes, and this is where I'm saying that Phonics International really complements No Nonsense Phonics and vice versa. So I'm so really quite proud of these pupil books and the way this scheme is developed, because it just hits the ground running with everything. But in Phonics International, you will find a whole range of additional activities in units 1 to 6 of 12 units of work, and they're not pink and fluffy. Every activity has got a specific teaching and learning intention, and so there's a real of additional resources that you can call upon if you want. And also the beauty of my work is you can just tell your parents about my websites, and then they can do their own finding out and hearing the sounds. I've got my alphabetic code charts website. I've got so much backup there that's working in partnership and informing parents, so that you as a school can say, we're doing this program and look here for all this information about the program. Now, if I was a parent now with children of that kind of age, I'd be thrilled to bits with that. And so I write my work and design it for all stakeholders, literally for all stakeholders. It supports everybody.
The other thing, sorry,
Carl, after you.
Yeah, the other thing I've noted is that, and this hasn't happened that much before in phonics, is the idea that because the children have got the booklet in front of them, all the previous learning is in front of them as well. So taking children back to previous content and having that time to revisit previous content, it goes down pretty well with the children, because things that they circled before that they couldn't do, because they've learned since then and done more, they can go over and now do things that they couldn't before. It's so good for motivation that I'm finding as well. So as well as the sort of intervention idea, going back over previous learning to really deepen and embed it is I think it's quite powerful as well.
Yes, and revisit and review in my work is not just flashcards of the code or just flashing them on a screen. Revisit and review is literally about looking at past work that the teacher says which to look at, or let the children just leaf through in the time that's allocated to revisit and review. And so all the elements of the teaching and learning cycle in my approach has got the match content for all that interleaving. And so the pupil books major on the code within the books and in the last book, but have, say, the sounds activities from the beginning. So if anyone gets hold of this, see if you can play a game of saying, okay, what's Debbie's thinking behind this? How has she designed this to be cumulative, to look back, to interleave, to revise? And those, say, the sounds activities are the equivalent of going through flashcard routines, but you put them in children's hands and in the home. So nothing is dependent on the teacher doing it to the children. And this is all about saturation of the things they need, and that raises the likelihood of embedded learning for all of the children.
Valerie's asked, can you get the programme on approval? If you drop us an email, Valerie, at feedback@raintree.co.uk, we can look at doing that for you, not a problem. I think we're out of time now, everyone.
Yes, I think that, well, I know you've said that, and that's very generous of you, Nat, but I think that's a great shame, because it's really not expensive and you can use these things anyway. Now, you imagine if like 20,000 schools wanted this on approval. So I know you've said you will, but I think that it's unreasonable. I'm sorry to say it, I know I'm always contentious, to expect a company to send you out the kit on approval. Now, actually, I've heard that you wouldn't want to send it back, but but bear in mind, I don't know that that's a fair idea. Just saying, as I do.
Oh, creeping out there, Debbie. On that note, I think we are out of time.
Right. Thank you ever so much, anyone who's been interested. Really appreciate that. Good luck with your hunt for a great programme. And let's see what happens in England's context. And thank you, Nat, very much indeed. And thank you, Carl, for your contribution. It's really appreciated. All the best, everybody.
Thank you all.